Hey guys, how are you all doing? I've got 21 through 30 for you today. So let's just go ahead and get into it and get started. So 21 wants to know for all x that are greater than 0, the expression 3x cubed over 3x to the ninth equals what? Okay, so if you know the math behind this, you know that the 3's cancel and then you subtract exponents. So x to the third on top and x to the ninth on the bottom. So that would be x to the negative 6th, okay? Another way of thinking about it is, where are there more x's? There are more x's on the bottom. How many more? So 6 more. All right, so that's 1 over x to the 6th. And then if you remember how to bring something to the top, when you bring it up, it turns into a negative exponent. Okay, so that's the reason why. It would work like that. Okay, so if you don't remember the math behind it, so obviously A is the answer. It looks like somebody has already circled it on the paper. So if you don't know how, or if you don't remember those math rules, a good option for you would just be to choose some random numbers, all right, or at least one random number. It says for all x that are bigger than 0. So remember, I like to stay away from 0, 1, and 2. 0 is not an option on this one, but I would stay away from 1 and 2 also. Try 3. So plug 3 into the top, plug 3 into the problem. So 3 cubed times 3 divided by 3 to the ninth times 3. That's going to output you a number. If you put 3 into all of your answer choices, so 3 to the negative 6, 3 to the third, 3 to the 6th, 3 to the 12th, 3 to the 27th, one of those is going to match up. It's going to be the same decimal or fraction or whatever your calculator outputted you. Okay, so there's a couple different options for you on a problem like that. 22. What values of a are solutions of a squared plus 2a equals 8? I think our best option on this is maybe just to take a look at our answer choices and see if any of them work. So let's take a look at F. It says 6 and 8. All right, let's try one of them. Let's try 6. If I plug 6 into the problem, that would be 6 squared is 36 plus 2 times 6, which is 12. All right, so that's obviously not 8. 36 and 12 doesn't add up to be 8. So F's not even an option anymore. Let's try G. 0 and 2. Okay, so 0 squared is 0 plus 2 times 0, which is 0. So 0 plus 0, is that 8? No. So G's not an option either. Okay, since G's not an option, J's also not an option, if you notice, okay, because J has 0 in it also, and we just proved that 0 didn't work. All right, so now we've got H and K left. Let's try H. So negative 2 squared would be 4, and then plus negative 2 times 2, which would be negative 4. So this would give me 4 plus negative 4, which I think would be 0 and not 8. All right, so H doesn't work. Numbers were a little bit tricky, and it didn't take me all that long, so I think I might try K as well while I'm here. So I'm going to try negative 4. So negative 4 squared would be 16, and then plus 2 times negative 4, which would be negative 8. All right, so that actually does equal 8. So K works out. We don't even need to try the other one. We don't need to try 2 because one of them worked, and if one of them works, we already proved that H wasn't going to work, so we should be good. All right, so good to go on 22. 23. The square graph below, what is the slope of the line segment AC? Okay, so AC would go across through here, it looks like. All right, so what we've got to think about is where is A and where is C? So how we know that slope is rise over run, okay? And we can do just rise over run here for our situation. So to get from A over to C, how far does it have to go up? Well, it has to go up 4 to get to 0, and then up 4 more to get to B. So the rise is 8. The run to get from B over to 0 would be 4, and then over to C would be 8 again. So 8 over 8 would equal us out to be 1. So C would be the slope of that line, 1. Number 24. The fixed cost of printing a certain textbook are $900 a week. The variable costs are $1.50 per textbook, which of the following expressions can be used to model the cost of printing textbooks in 1 week. Now, we talked about a while back how the easiest way to approach some of these problems is just to write as you are reading. So what this one says is it's going to cost you $900 regardless. Oh my goodness, hang on. This one says it's going to cost you $900 regardless. Okay, and then it's going to cost you $1.50 for every textbook you make. Okay, that's going to be your cost. Whoops, that was supposed to be a dollar sign, but my second number didn't come in. There we go. All right. So let's look over on our options and see if that's over, or something at least close to that is over there. Definitely not F. That looks stupid. G says 150T minus 900. Okay. That's kind of close, but not really it. So I'm going to mark it out. H says 900 plus 900T plus 150. All right, they got their T in the wrong spot. J says 900 minus 150T. Nah. But K says 900 plus 150T. So we've got our answer. Okay. 25. In the figure below, the perimeter of the triangle is 15 plus 5 square root of 3. All right, what is the value of x? Okay, so basically, perimeter would be all of the sides added together, and we don't know the hypotenuse of this. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to make an assumption and say that 5 is probably our best option to try first. Okay, the reason for that is, up here in the problem, I have 5 square root of 3. Okay, so if I were to put 5 in as x, then this bottom would be 5 square root of 3, and then that would obviously work out because the other two could just add together and then end up being that. But I want to test it because I could end up getting something square root of 3 as my hypotenuse. So I'm going to put 5 there, I'm going to put 5 there. I'm going to do the Pythagorean theorem. So 5 squared plus 5 square root of 3 squared is equal to c squared. It says 25 plus, this is actually 75. All right, because you have to square the 5 and square the square root of 3. So that's 25 times 3 is 75. So that equals c squared. This is 100. And when you take the square root, that equals 10. So this side is 10. So if we add the 10 and the 5, that gives us 15. And then we've got the 5 square root of 3 left over. All right, so on that one, our strategy was choosing one that looked like it made the most sense and seeing if you can prove it to be right. All right, and it did end up being right. Number 26, if 4 squared root of 9 over y squared of 11 is 4 squared root of 9 over 11, then y is what? Okay, so what could we put on the bottom that would make, when multiplied by square root of 11, it would make it 11? So let's try our answer choices. 1 times the square root of 11, I'll even type that in the calculator if you want. 1 times the square root of 11, that gives me 3.31, which is the square root of 11, which is definitely not 11, so F is not the choice. Let's try G. Square root of 11 times square root of 11. Hang on, I pushed the wrong button. Times square root of 11. All right, that outputs me 11, which is what I was looking for. All right, so that one's a dead giveaway. If you remember rationalizing the denominator, when you multiply by the same thing, it takes the square root away because it's the square root squared, so that's what would output it. That one would have been a dead giveaway. Let's look at 27. Got a lot of words. Let's get the question. What's the capacity in gallons of each of the small size buckets? All right, so we got some buckets going on here. He's got 3 different size buckets. Total capacity of 12 buckets is G gallons. Total capacity of 8 buckets of another size is G gallons. And the total capacity of 4 buckets of the third size is also G gallons. So in terms of G, when G is bigger than 0, what's the capacity in gallons of each of the smallest size buckets? So this one up here is the smallest size bucket because there's 12 of them to make the same as what the big bucket does 4. Okay, so if 4 buckets, let's just make this 1 gallon. Okay, so 1 gallon. For the biggest bucket, 4 of them equals that. Okay, so each bucket, so let's say big, each bucket would be a fourth. Okay, a fourth of a gallon. For the medium, you need 8 buckets to make a gallon. Okay, if we're still making G1. So the medium is an eighth of a gallon. The small, you need 12 of them. So each bucket is a 12th of 1 gallon. All right, so it wants to know what's the capacity of the smallest size bucket. That would be G divided by 12, because in our case we made G1, so if I just substitute G back in there, I got G over 12, and that gives me the formula for my bucket. 28. What's the area of a circle that has a circumference of 0.5 pi? If you remember, the area formula is A equals pi r squared. All right, so I've got pi times 0.5 pi squared. All right, now I could work this out. I could square all that crap. I could cancel out some pi's and stuff. I'm just going to get a number. I'm going to type it in the calculator. Pi times, let me wrap this up, 0.5 pi. And I'm going to square that. All right, gave me 7.75. Okay, that's not any of my answer choices. Okay, but what I can do is, let me make sure that typed in right. 0.5 pi squared times pi. Yeah, 7.75. All right, so what I can do is take my answer choices and turn them into decimals. Okay, so 0.0625 pi. Whoops, I got a V in there somehow. Top one gives me 0.19. That ain't it. All right, so then I got 0.1 pi. Right, 0.314. That ain't it. So I got 0.25 pi. That's 0.78. Still not it, because remember I'm looking for 7.75. 25 pi. That's 78.53. Oh, I have made a grave error. Let me please take this back a notch, because I misread this question and thought they had just told us the radius. All right, I am very, very sorry. Let me start this over. We need to work for circumference, okay, because circumference formula is 2 pi r, okay? So it tells me what the circumference is. So it tells me 0.5 pi is 2 pi r, okay? So let's go back to my mistake there that I made just a second ago. If you made that same mistake and you would have been going through here and you notice none of your answer choices match up, don't just choose the one that's closest to it, okay? Try to find out what you did wrong in order to fix it. All right, so let's continue on here. If I want to solve for r, I'd have to divide by 2 pi, because r is what I'm going to need moving forward. All right, so the pi's are going to cancel. R is whatever 0.5 divided by 2 is, okay, which is 0.25. So now A equals, oops, that's the wrong formula. Pi r squared. R is 0.25, so I've got to do pi times 0.25 squared, all right, which still is not an answer choice. But if I do 0.25 squared, it tells me 0.0625, and then I know that if I put pi beside it, it's going to be f. But again, if you want to figure out what the decimal is for that, multiply it by pi. It's 0.1963, and then go through your answer choices and turn them all into decimals and figure out which one matches, okay? So sorry I made that mistake, but that's a good learning moment, because if you realize that you're off, don't just willy-nilly pick one that's closest to it, okay? Try to figure out what your problem was. That didn't take us long, and we were still able to recover from it. 29. What's the volume in cubic meters of cube y? So x has an edge length of 2 inches, and y has an edge length triple that. All right, so this is what the ACT does. They can't just tell you that it's 6. They've got to just, they want you to have to do some math in order to be able to do some math, okay? So x has an edge length of 2, but y has an edge length triple that, okay? So 2 times 3 would be 6. So our length in y is 6, and we want to know the volume. So that's length times width times height. We also talked about how volume was the area of the base and then multiplied by the height. So here again, it would be 6 times 6 and then multiplied by the height, which is 6. So we really just need to figure out what 6 times 6 times 6 is, which is 216, which is answer choice E. One more. I've got to go down here and get the question. This is a lot of words. Which of the following is the closest to the value of an investment account after 3 years if $8,000 is deposited at 5% annual interest compounded annually? All right, this one is simple interest. All right, so it gives us a formula. Actually, this is not simple interest. This is, I don't know what formula this is, but simple is I equals PRT. So we're using this formula. So let's plug in the information that they give us. P is the amount deposited. Okay, so let's see. Does it give us that down here in our problem? All right, 8,000 is deposited. So there's P. So we've got 8,000 times 1 plus R. So R is the rate of the interest. So R would be 5. Do we need to put that as 0.5, 0.05? I think we probably should, because 5% represented as a decimal would be 0.05. And then to the power of n, so n is the number of compounding periods. All right, so if it's compounded annually, that means it's only compounded once a year. Okay, is there any more information that they gave us? Yes, they said after 3 years. Okay, so let's say, so compounding periods, let's change this 1 up to a 3 because, whoops, I did not go where my pen said to go. Because we're actually compounding it 3 times. I don't know what's going on here, but it is not writing this where I want it to. Here we go. Let's type that in. So I'm going to do the parenthesis part first. So 1.05 to the third would give me 1.15, and then I'm going to multiply that by 8,000, which is 9261, which just so happens to be answer choice G. Okay? All right, so hopefully you were able to learn a little bit from this. At some point, you're going to be able to take the ACT again, I promise. I hope at some point we're coming out of this and we get to come back to school. But if you got